Hey, what's up? It's Kevin Miller, and I am excited to be talking about Adobe Premiere Pro with you today. So let's just dive right in and see what we can find out. First, what we want to do is make sure that the Creative Cloud app is running. It's not always necessary to do this, but if you want the latest, most up-to-date program, then you want to make sure that that cloud is running. So what you want to do is just check your toolbar up here at the top and click on the Adobe Cloud. First, make sure you're signed in. Click on Apps and navigate down to Adobe Premiere Pro CC and just make sure that that isn't asking you to install it or to update or anything like that. From here, you can open it, or you can navigate to your applications and do it that way. So let's open this up and talk a little bit about what we see. We're not going to get into building any projects just yet. We just want to kind of get an understanding and a familiarity with the program. And the first thing we see is this it's not a splash screen, but it's kind of your first step into starting a project. If you haven't started any projects yet, there's a good chance that this would be blank and even suggest something like this, different things that you can learn about it. I highly encourage you to check those out. Most of them are pretty good. But let's just dive right in. We'll create a new project. We're going to title this, let's try Premiere Tutorial, and find a place to save it. I'm going to save this to an external hard drive. Tutorial. At this point, I want to make sure that you understand the importance of organization. Things can get out of hand very quickly, especially when you start to get comfortable with the program and start moving faster and faster through it. You'll find yourself getting sloppier and sloppier with the elements that you use to create a video. So inside here, I'm going to create a clips folder. I'm going to create an audio folder. I'm going to create an assets folder. And I'm going to create a finals, sometimes I'll call this a renders folder. And so respectively, all of your raw video clips are going to go here, all of your audio, background music, even audio that you'd say, okay, I have this clip and it's got some voice on there, but I want to kind of tweak the voice a little bit. Typically, it'll spit out a separate audio track, and you can put that in your audio files here. Assets for things like logos or background images go here. And so this just kind of keeps everything nice and orderly. There's different ways to organize, but this is how I do it and has been the most beneficial to me. Of course, a project file. I guess I call it program file. Can I rename it? Yay, programs. And inside that, I'm gonna make new folders. Okay, well, try this. Okay, and what I did now right there is just shorthand PR for Premiere. So I'll make a Premiere folder and an Audition folder and maybe a After Effects folder. And we're just going to save all of our Premiere project stuff to this folder here. You may find that you work on a project and you want to go back and make some changes or whatever. You can have that project with, when you type out some sort of date extensions. Okay, this is the most recent project that I was working on. In this way, you don't delete things that you may want to go back to later. It's a very non-invasive way of doing it. Kind of an insurance policy against your own creativity. So that's good. We're not going to worry about scratch disk or ingest settings. You'll never mess with that. Just double check your renderer and make sure that you select the GPU that is applicable to your machine. In this case, it's this OpenCL for me. Feel free to do what you want. I would discourage using the software only. It's relying on more of the computer itself to process some rather intense information rather than a dedicated video card like what we have here with a GPU. Everything else is fine. Display format timecode is wonderful. I never use any of this other stuff. Audio is fine. Capture format, that doesn't apply to what you're doing. So hit OK and open this thing up. All right. Your screen may look different than mine. That's perfectly fine. What we want to do is kind of get on the same page. So up at the top, click on Assembly. And this is where we're going to start. If you don't see this, navigate to the window up here in the File, Edit, Clip area. Window, Workspaces, and Assembly. If it still doesn't show up quite like this, maybe it's just a blank screen, click on Window, Workspaces, Reset to Saved Layout. And what that will do is it will bounce it back to kind of default settings in a way. And then you can come back here and save changes to this workspace. And that will hopefully solve the problem. Okay, so what are we looking at? Well, up here we have the different layouts that we can go from. Assembly. This is perfect for, I just want to put something on a timeline and see how it looks. Editing, we're getting a little more involved. This is kind of where I live between editing and color. You can, it just gives you more tools to work with to kind of refine the video as well as the color. Effects, that's self-explanatory. Audio is self-explanatory. Titles, I never really mess with that. Libraries, that is more for if you have a subscription to Adobe Stock, which is a fantastic resource. It's a little out of my price range, but if you find yourself wanting to use stock video and stock pictures for just anything you want to use them for, that is a great library of stuff. And what you can do is you can say, okay, I bought it, and it will automatically, because you're logged into the Adobe ecosystem, will populate inside of the library stuff. Feel free to click around that and see what you want to do. You also have your own library, and you can create a custom library of things like you know, maybe you want the church logo in here so that you always have it. That's something you can look into. I don't, but that's your call. I'll go back to assembly here. Graphics, we'll talk a little bit about that. That will be very important. We may wait until a later tutorial to talk about that, but extremely handy. Standard, this doesn't typically show itself on my machine at home, but it doesn't it's just a different way of doing the same thing. So we'll go back to assembly. All right, what are we looking in here? We're looking at the projects panel, and this is where all of your raw clips and pictures and audio will find themselves. You can right-click, import. You can drag and drop your clip. There's half a dozen ways. So you can go to your media browser, which is right next door to that, and navigate through basically your computer and say, okay, Easter, click on that, and I want to bring in these Easter lilies. I can right click, import, and it is going to import those files. You don't have to worry about this too much, it just gives you more information than you probably need. But for Photoshop files, you get kind of this thing. It's giving you all of the information you could possibly ever want. So about that. Right now it's saying to merge. I want individual layers. I want that one, and yeah. So I hit OK. And doggone it, it gave me all the layers. So usually when you don't do that, it just gives you one flat image, kind of like a JPEG. We're just going to delete that. I'm sure cut would do it, but select it, delete. Okay. So that's that. You can look at it in a list like we just saw. There's also a thumbnail way to look at it, so you can see a quick little image thumbnail of what you're looking at. On the videos, you can even scrub through the thumbnail a little bit and kind of get a very low res look at what the clip is. Over here, you can create a new bin all day long. Again, assisting in organization. My organization in this projects panel is very similar to the organization I try and keep in this Finder window. but you pick the method that works best for you. Markers, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the audio clip mixer. Don't worry about the libraries. Okay, that's all we got there. Oh yeah, and this little thing, you can kind of navigate to the one that you want. Sometimes you'll have a zillion of these in one bin like this, or one panel like this. Of course, you can arrange this however you want. You know, I can move this around here. I can, I can even undock it and make it its own thing. But we'll go back to what we had. Oh no, that's okay. We have an issue, so we'll go back to reset to saved layout. Perfect. Okay, so that's pretty much all we're going to talk about from the project panel. Over here, you can create a new timeline sequence. I can't really see you using too much of this other stuff. It's handy, look it up on your own time, but not necessary to get you up and running. Tools, your selection tool, you'll use that. The razor tool, you'll use that. And the type tool, you'll use that. The rest of these, again, you can feel free to look up on your own time, but you don't need them to get started. Timeline, this is where everything happens. This is the guts of the project. What appears here, and what you and when you click on File, Export Media, whatever's on that timeline is what's going to be exported. And we'll dive into that a little bit maybe next time when we actually open a project and start to build something. You'll see here we've selected time code. We wanted to read everything in time code. When we saw this thing at the start, some of this is a little different now that we have it open. But you remember that you had general, what's the renderer, what's the video, audio, and the capture. For video, we wanted to display it in time code. This is handy. So when you look at time code, you'll have 4 sets of zeros. This first set over here is the frames. For most video, you're probably going to look at 29 point something, let's say 96, something like that, frames per second. So for instance, we have 60 seconds in a minute. We have 24 hours in a day. And these different numbers that you wouldn't think accumulate to 100%. For video, for 100% of a second, it is comprised of these different frames. And it goes all the way back to when we were, like animators were drawing a picture, a zillion pictures to just make up 1 minute of video. So we have frames, seconds, which then start to interpret and start to behave like time. So, 60 seconds will equal a minute and that sort of thing. So frames are the only weird ones. Seconds, minutes, hours. Okay, and if we're working on a project with hours, I'm probably not the one who's going to be working on it with you. So good luck. This is handy. This will probably be on by default, and it just helps you snap 2 clips together. And you'll find out real fast in just utilizing this program that's handy. Up here is your program monitor. And in program, everything that is displayed in the timeline is played out, and you can see it in real time in the program monitor. This is your TV, for lack of description. And it will show you everything that you need to know, or show you everything that you have done, in the timeline project. And again, we'll get to see this in action a little bit later. Source. So we want to see something over here. We want to watch it. We want to listen to it or something like that. But we don't want to actually have it drag it into the timeline. We just want to kind of get a sneak peek at this thing, more than what a thumbnail would show us. If you double click on the item over here in your project panel, it will show itself in the source window. It will just open up the source window like this. It won't ask permission or anything like that, because it thinks that that's what you want to do. And you can watch and set in and out times for what you're doing here. And if that kind of went over your head, we'll get to play with that a little bit as well. All right, editing. Editing is very important. Most of this stuff stayed the same. Your project panel moved down a little bit. That's fine. We have an editing panel or effects panel that has shown itself, And here are all the effects that you can apply to a video and audio. Some of the most important include, these transitions. Cross dissolve. That's really the only transition that you need besides a straight up cut. And most of the time you barely need a cross dissolve. I pretty much use it only in the beginnings and endings of the videos that I do. The only exception for church is a sermon video in which we start already full screen on the sermon graphic. So feel free to look through those as you find necessary, as you find time. There's a lot of good stuff, and honestly, you can go to a Google search and say, what is Adobe Premiere cell pattern ? I mean, we're not even making, you don't have to make a real complete sentence. You just do that. And there, I promise someone has come up with either a tutorial or a quickie little GIF image or whatever that just sort of shows you what that looks like and how that works. Just fair warning, there are a lot of effects and a lot of transitions here. Not all of them are necessary to create good video. In fact, quite a majority of them will ruin very good video. So use them sparingly. Watch TV, watch a movie, see what smart people are doing with video that is enticing, and use that creativity and adapt it to your own style. So if we apply an effect to our video, and it's usually as easy as dragging the effect to the video, it will show itself in the effects controls. And here's where you can manipulate that effect. Timeline's the same, program's the same, audio mixer, we don't really mess with that. You can, but the effects, I mess with the audio and the effects controls. So metadata, as far as I'm concerned, that can just disappear. Just close that panel. If you want to become a nerd and really get in there and type up some metadata, you feel free to do that. Over here is the audio. You'll see this thing metering up. I mean, if you've ever seen a 1980s music video, they always have meters bumping over here and stuff. So that's pretty self-explanatory. That is Premiere Pro CC, just sort of the basic layout. That's everything really that you need to know to get started. So I hope you had fun with this. I hope it's a little more clear, a little bit clearer. Well, we'll get the color later since I'm wrapping this thing up. But that should get you started. And next we are going to dig into actually creating something